What about this? Russia clearly is provoking, and it's one of many of these different aggressive moves in recent weeks and months.
Yeah, we're dealing with a third-rate power who's trying to, as Gates and Panetta said, make an outsized mark on the world stage. I happen to think, my opinion here is that if we had a President Trump or a President Cruz, we'd still have the same kind of aggression from Putin. It's in his best interest to try to get us all riled up. And I think President Obama, the case that they're making in the White House is not to take the bait, not to respond to this kind of activity. Russia obviously isn't going to go to war against us. If they do, we'll annihilate them.
Charles?
This isn't about threatening war on either side. This is about the Russians demonstrating to the East Europeans, who assumed that at the end of the Cold War, at the settlement of 1992, East Europe was safely in the camp. They were now in NATO. They would be protected. They have seen what has happened in Georgia. They've seen what has happened in Ukraine. They've seen the flaccidity of the Obama response to all the provocations. And they want to show the East Europeans you cannot count on the United States. They want to show they can do anything to us, including this kind of humiliation of flying within a few feet of while we are conducting exercises with the Poles, who are our strongest ally in the region. The response is not to shoot them down, although we would all enjoy seeing that. It would be to either do the same thing to them. They operate in the area out of Kaliningrad, which is a Russian enclave, heavily armed, and show them that we aren't afraid. And the other response is the Russians are responding, in essence, to a minor increase in our military presence in the Baltic states and Poland. We should respond by upping that response, doubling it, and making it a permanent one, as a way to say, if you want to play, we'll play harder.
Steve, I mean, a couple of things. One is, you heard the former defense secretary is talking about Russia, and the now chairman of the Joint Chiefs saying Russia was the big threat. When I talked to the Ukrainian president, he said those Baltic states should be worried that Putin has a vision of an old Soviet empire, and he thinks he's going to move on.
Yeah, he's made that clear, and people around Putin have made that clear. I think he's right to say that they should be worried. This is in response to the president's sort of determined effort not to overreact, which usually means for the president not to react at all or to apologize for the United States and its actions. And we've seen this. I mean, Charles mentioned Russia. We've certainly seen this with respect to Russia. Remember, John Kerry went on all of the Sunday shows and said Russia will be isolated for what it's done to the Crimean Peninsula. They will be, cast out of the civilized nations, the community of civilized nations. Never happened. The United States drew them in even closer, went back on our word on that. The same was true, of course, with Iran. The same was true with the Syrian Red Line. Vladimir Putin knows that Barack Obama is not going to do anything about this. At most, Obama would consider sending additional resources and troops to the Baltics. I think even that will be a bridge too far.
Isn't it true, though, that even though Russia's economy is hurting, and some of these sanctions have had an effect, Putin is playing a bad hand pretty well as far as geopolitical dominance?
Yeah, but what is the ultimate end game here? Do we think sitting around this table that Obama or the next president is going to let Putin march on the rest of the Baltic states? I don't think that's going to happen. Do we think that he's going to keep trying to have an outsized image on the global stage and to embarrass our president, no matter whether it's a Republican or Democratic president? Yeah.
All right, quickly, I want to talk about ISIS. The president talked about that at the CIA and his National Security Council today. Here is General Odierno talking about the former head of the Army chief, talking about what's needed to defeat ISIS.
I haven't studied it intently to give you a number, but I'm going to tell you it's a big number. I mean,
20,000?
Bigger than that.
30?
Yeah, probably around 50.
Okay, 50,000.
But that's with a coalition of capability.
50,000 troops needed to defeat ISIS. Here's ISIS by the numbers. 19 countries, territories where ISIS has a direct presence. 74 ISIS plots or attacks, including 21 in the U.S. Against the West since 2014. 300, about the number of Americans who are spreading ISIS propaganda or engaging in other ISIS aligned individuals via social media. 6,600 those who traveled or attempted to travel to join ISIS in Syria, and 11,539 Those are the airstrikes conducted against ISIS in Iraq and Syria as of yesterday, Charles.
Look, this is often an excuse. The spread of ISIS is an excuse to say, well, it's everywhere. It's ideology. It's in the internet. What's the point of risking anything in the Middle East? The fact is, as we've seen with Al-Qaeda, that if you have a safe haven from which you can operate, you can do tremendous damage. And if that safe haven is destroyed, which essentially it was for Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, the beginning of the Afghan war, the amount of damage that you can do afterwards is a lot smaller. Simply because you don't have a safe haven, a place you can train, but also the psychology. These apocalyptic movements are all about who's winning and who's losing. It would be a tremendous defeat for ISIS and for the cells spread everywhere in the world if they were ultimately to lose their safe haven in the Middle East. They would not be able to say we are the wave of the future, and I think that would have the biggest impact on recruiting, bigger than anything else that we can do by tweeting.
Next up,